Hello and welcome to Rosie's Preserving School Pressure Canning. It's a fabulous Saturday afternoon here in Rutland. We arrived early so that we wouldn't be rushing and had to sit outside for about 20 minutes in the most almighty thunderstorm. So, and it's still sort of rumbling on a bit, although it was torrential rain. We could not have got out of the car. So that was fun. We've been having them all week, to be honest, and it's been amazing, but slightly disruptive, as you can imagine. So today we are going to be doing, I never know which order to put it in, green garden pasta sauce or garden green pasta sauce, whichever. But it's an ideal recipe at this time of year for all those things that you've got sort of slightly too much of. You know, things that, well, you should have, but the weather pattern's been so weird here in the UK that, you know, we aren't quite where we would normally be with things like beans and so on. But things like the French beans, dwarf beans, green beans, spinach, herbs, onions, all those kinds of things, anything green basically could go into this. So if you have a fennel bulb around, you could chop that up and put it in, but be careful because it is quite strongly flavoured. And anything else that you've grown or you see out either, you know, at farm gate or in a shop that you like and you want to put in, then go for it. But we've restricted it to the ingredients that are on the sheet for today, but please yourself really. But it's ideal for using up things imaginatively that perhaps you're normally getting a little bit tired of by this time in the year. But you know, we're not quite there yet, I don't think, but that's good because we've got something that we can do when we are. So I'm going to, I've prepped some of my things. This isn't my recipe, and I have to be honest, I've never made it before, so I'll be making it with you. Mainly because when I was writing all of these workshops, it had gone past this stage last year, so I never did get to try it. So, but we'll see. I don't think it's going to be particularly difficult. In here I've got 2 of my onions. I've got 3 onions because they weren't very big. I've got some of the spinach, I've got the garlic, and I've got the green beans, and the stick of celery. And you need to keep everything as small as you can. So you can see the pan on this side here, just here, and this is my colander with the other things in that I haven't done yet. So I'm going to finish the spinach. I picked this morning before it started raining, thank goodness. I think some of it is actually charred leaves, but it's all one and the same really. So I'm going to cut this, I'm going to put the stems in, stalks, because they're nice and tender. Then I'm going to roll the spinach up and just shred it across just to get it quite fine. Because when we process it to make the sauce, I don't want big flat sheets of spinach in there to sort of tangle everything up. But that may still happen, of course, but this will try and sort of mitigate it a bit. So far so good. It smells absolutely wonderful. We had storms all day yesterday. It didn't stop raining, or it was beyond rain. It was just like being in an African sort of monsoon all day, and in the evening it was really quite cold, and we all even thought about lighting the wood burner last night in the middle of July. I mean, that's how cold it was. But I had all sorts of salady things and cold things, you know, for supper, but neither of us fancied them in the cold. So we had a jar of the chicken, not chicken, vegetable soup, and it was just the ticket. It was fabulous with some nice homemade thick toast with it, slices of toast to dip in, and it just hit the spot. So I was glad we'd done that. So celery, I meant to show you before I cut it. If you remember, if you get the inside of the stick towards you and bend it just crack it back and pull it, any strings like that will come away, and it just makes it that bit more sort of nice to eat. So if you do the stick before you cut it, like I didn't, and it's quite easy to do, and you can pull out anything that's a bit stringy. I wish I'd known that years ago. My father didn't tell me till I was about 40, and it would have been good to have known much earlier on. There we are. Better late than never, I suppose. And then just cut it across. I cut it down vertically and into 3, and now I'm cutting it across into small dice. So to recap, we have celery, we have French beans, we have garlic, spinach, onion, and we're going to have green pepper and courgette as well. I'll probably miss something out in that list. And then we've got a whole lot of herbs. So let's do my other onion. I cut my onions in half, and then I hold it and slice down from top to bottom, as thick or as thin as I need it. Take your time, we all don't need to be Jamie Oliver. And then holding it again, still firmly, cut across, and you'll end up with quite small dice. Or if you've cut it thicker for a reason, then you know they'll end up being the size you want them. And then I turn the whole thing over using the blade of the knife to support it, and then do my best to cut up the rest of it before it decides to splay out everywhere. We are going to be processing this before we put it in the jars, but it isn't going to be cooking for very long, so it's still going to be quite hard. So you need it fairly small. I mean, you don't have to process it at all. You can leave it as a sort of chunky sauce if you prefer. But I'm going to do mine with a stick blender in the pan, or you can do it in a goblet food processor or in any other kind of processor that you've got that will work. But just be careful processing hot liquids, because the goblet processors tend to spit them out a bit if they're too hot, I've found. So I don't do that anymore. I'll turn that over, start going the other way. Goodness me, I've managed to get through the whole half without it disintegrating. Okay, so I've only got a few more things to add. So at this stage, I've already put my canner on to heat up, and I'm going to put this on to start cooking. I'm going to pour the stock in. I've got a litre of hot Vegemite stock there, which is the one I make with salt and vegetables. So I'm going to put in most of it. I'm not going to put in quite all, and I'll show you why in a minute. So, but this will just stop it all sticking to the pan and burning when I turn the heat on. So let's get that heated up. And if you want to put, you know, like green chilies in or something like that, if you like all your things to be hot, then that's fine. I prefer to add things like that if I need them, but it's up to you. If you want them in there now, then you could put them in. Right, so I've got green pepper. I showed you this before, but I'll do it again. Pepper with the top there, just push with your thumbs, push the stalk in, and then you can open the pepper in half and take out the pieces quite easily, and then just cut it so that you can scrape out the rest of the seeds, not pips. Cut out any bits that have got left behind, and you don't waste as much as sort of trying to cut the stalk out with a knife. You can use all of the pepper. And I'm going to cut that into strips and then chop it across the other way to make pieces quite small. I think there's so much pepper in one pepper. It's once you chop it up like this, it's I like this recipe because there's not much waste. You know, you don't end up with a big pile of things you're not using. It's just literally some onion skins and some ends of beans. If you are processing things during the summer and you do have a pile of bits and pieces, you can make what's called a compost jelly from it. If you've got some cooking apples around, chop them up, peel, core and everything, put them in the pan, cover them with cold water, add all your peelings if they're clean. Make sure they're clean, especially things like bits of red pepper or chili, anything with lots of flavour. And you can cook it all up together and make a compost jelly from it. You'd be surprised just how much of things you can use. Right, pepper going in. That's just from one pepper. I mean, it's quite a lot of pepper. Now then, we needed I think it was 3 to 5 courgettes, depending on size. I didn't buy any this week. I had to buy 1 or 2 things, but I didn't buy any. I haven't been able to go out in the garden since last weekend because of all the storms, but I thought, I know last Sunday there were lots of courgette flowers, so I won't buy any. I went out this morning. I've got 3 huge plants, and I went to the first one and there was nothing. And I went to the second one and there was nothing. I thought, this is really strange. And I went to the third one and this is what there was. So that's my 3 to 5 courgettes. I doubt I'll get through chopping all of it. I'm going to start with half and then I'll see where I go. I don't take the skin off or anything. It's all good stuff. Just going to take the end off. But isn't that always the way with courgettes? You end up with a massive, great... I was lucky there was a break in the rain and I was able to retrieve it. Don't quite know how I'm going to slice this into small pieces, but anyway, doesn't really matter because courgette will cook down to be quite soft. It's not going to be tough at all. So I'll try and slice it across in sticks and then chop it the other way and hope for the best. I mean, none of this is going to matter if it's a bit lumpy. I think you need a bit of texture, but luckily it's very young and it hasn't developed loads of seeds in the middle. I mean, they are there, but they're not developed yet, so I don't need to fret about those. But what a fabulous way to use courgettes if, you know, if you've got a glut of them. All of these amounts are approximate. You can, you know, it's nothing's going to happen if you kind of have double of something. But just try and keep a balance with very strong things like fennel. You know, they need to be used with caution, I think, because they will take over and everything will taste of fennel. And that's half of half. It's going in. And the other half. Right. I think that's roughly equivalent to what we should be having. I'm going to keep the other half. Well, I'm not going to keep it, but I'm going to keep some of this back for our supper tonight. So I may end up chopping up the rest of it and putting it in there for later. But that's quite a good mix. Certainly looking very green. So finally, I just have the herbs, and that's why I kept this stock back. What I'm going to do is strip off the leaves from the herbs. That's some basil, which is fabulous, smells amazing, tastes amazing. I'm just taking the leaves off of the central stalks in this instance. If I'm making pesto and they're in good condition and they're just going in the processor, I tend to just chop them across. You don't want anything woody going in. I've got my flat leaf parsley and I'm just going to take off the ends of the stalks. It doesn't have to be flat leaf, it can be any kind of parsley. But these days it seems to be the only type of parsley you get offered. And I tend not to grow parsley, because what I find is I think, oh, I'll just leave it another day, I'll leave it another day, see if it gets any bigger, and then you go out and it's gone to seed, and then you've got to try and rescue bits of it, and then you know, it comes up for 2 or 3 years running, and then you start the whole process again. So I've got most herbs in the garden, but not parsley at the present time. So I'm going to put all those, that's a bit wishy-washy. And then I've got a whole load of oregano that I picked and stripped off the stalks earlier. That can go in. So it's quite a lot of herbs, but that's a good thing this time of year when they're at the best. Use them in everything you possibly can. I'm just going to chop them with scissors very roughly, and then they'll get chopped by the stick blender when I get to that bit. So let's put all that in. There we go. Oh, they're in the stalk just so they don't stick too much. Now I've just got my big kitchen scissors and I'm going to go in. This is how I make my when I chop parsley for not parsley, mint, for mint jelly. I put it in a little bit of vinegar, chop it like this, and then add it to the jelly in the pan. And it's something to do while you're waiting for the jelly to get up to setting point. And really, it's easier than putting a small amount of herbs into some kind of mechanical chopper, because they just end up stuck to everything and you waste it all. Or waste, you have to have twice as much as you need to start with so that you can waste half of it. Okay, that's enough to stop them sticking too much to the blender blades, and I'll put those in. I'll just let them all cook together for a very short time, and then we'll get blending it ready to go in the canner. At these last few herbs out the bottom of there. Get rid of this. A bit of a stir. check my ingredients. I know we've got some sugar to go in, and that will counteract the salt and any sort of sharpness in the vegetables. So I haven't used mushrooms. You can if you want to, and you can add them, but don't blend them in with everything else. Just add them once everything else is blended, and just chop them finely. It's because they end up too stuck together. They make everything too dense for even heat transference. I've got all of that, garlic cloves. I'm not putting any extra salt in because I have enough in my stock. I'm going to put some black pepper and then the sugar. Find my black pepper. Yep, black pepper. Make sure I'm not putting in something completely different. That's that, half a teaspoon. And then 4 ounces, 125 grams of demerara sugar. Got the scales here. Smooth this up. Chopping board. Right. It's a courgette. Scales on. I haven't got a scale pan. I'll use the one of the jars. So 125 grams. I mean, it's not a lot in a pan that size. That's it. Now, as with all sugar adding to any preserve, you need to make sure that it's dissolved. So stir it in and keep stirring. It will feel quite different to the vegetables. It will feel gritty, and you need to make sure that's sort of melted through and evenly dispersed. Won't take very long. In fact, I'm going to turn the heat off now because there's plenty of heat there to melt the sugar. Turn my scales off. Out the way. Now the blending, you can do as much or as little as you want to. You can keep it, you know, so there's sort of visible chunks, or you can do it quite thoroughly. But as I say, I haven't made this, so we'll see how it ends up, how successful this system is. Because frankly, if this doesn't chop it very effectively, I'm going with how it is. I'm not going to sort of transfer it to something else to do it more smoothly or anything like that, because it will cook down in the processing, and I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine. So putting it onto the table so I can control it. I'll get rid of my spoon. Now I'm a bit ham-fisted with these, so we'll probably all end up covered in green sauce. as I said, I never remembered to keep it submerged. Right, I'm going to quit while I'm winning. Okay, put that there. So we can go straight on to filling the jars. See how this works out. How many jars it makes. Usual thing, fill up to the fill line, about 3 centimeters below the top, or 1 inch. I've got my funnel, but I'm doing 500 ml jars because that will be plenty of sauce for us two for 1 meal. But if I need more, I can open 2 jars. But 750 ml would be too much. So let's see how many it makes. I've created quite a bit of froth on the top there doing this, but I'm sure it will just disintegrate. You're right if I didn't keep splashing it all down my front. So it's not you know, smooth, but it's going to cook down in the processing. And also when I heat it up to use it, I am going to be thickening it. And to do that, I will either use an arrowroot or corn flour and water mix and stir it in, and probably once it's the right consistency, I will add some either cream or plain yogurt as well. So that looks quite nice in the jar actually. So I'm aiming to do sort of 1 layer of jars with enough left over in the pan for our supper later. It's 2. I think this is going to be one of those things that is just a pasta sauce. I don't think it's going to go on and sort of be a base for things, or nothing's sort of grabbing me at the moment. But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you don't have to be able to make 6 other things from everything. But it might be that you can do something like stuffed pancakes or cannelloni or something like that, and lay them in a baking tray and then pour this over as a sauce and top it with cheese or something like that. That's 4. Smells very healthy, I have to say. It's all nice and sort of clean, and that's 5. If I can get another one out, and then what's left can be for us for later. I get a little bit more in that one, which wasn't quite full up. And there's 2 earlier ones. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so that would just make one layer in. If I put this in a jar as well, which I'm not going to, it would make one layer in the canna. So once we've got a proper glut going on in the garden, we'll be able to do 2 layers, no problem. Okay, that can just stand back on there now. Let's move that while we get our jars wiped and sealed. Bring these over. Seals, my kitchen roll. With vinegar, just in case I manage to splosh it onto the edge of the jars. Even if you think they're all right, it's not worth risking it and then you don't get a seal. I don't know about you, but with all of these we've been doing, I've not had a seal failure, so it's worth just spending that 2 or 3 minutes to do this, although it seems a bit, you know, pointless at sometimes. Okay, on with the seal. You can use light brown, I would say. I wouldn't use dark brown because it will just all end up a bit muddy. But as Jane wanted to know if she can use light or dark brown sugar. I mean, you could use white granulated. It's just, I think when you've got the chance to use demerara, it just adds a bit of more flavour. Right, I'm going to start putting these in the canner as I go. 2, 3. 4. Oops. But if you've got a garden glut, then you know, but it might only be a couple of weeks further on, you can easily double up this recipe and make a great big pan full. That lid's a bit bent. Go on. Better. 5. And the last one. 6. Okay. So let's get the canner closed up. Check everything. Yep. And get the right bit. Twist. And turn it up. And clear the decks. I didn't debubble. I forgot, but I don't think it will need it. We didn't have such big lumps that oh, I haven't put the vinegar in. We didn't have such big lumps that it would matter. I'm going to put the vinegar in, I forgot, and I don't want white lime markings on my jars. That I remembered. So that's finished with. I'm going to clear up a little bit while you're getting to where you're getting to. It's like we're venting already. So I'll put my timer on. 10 minutes. So in that 10 minutes, do you have any questions you want to ask about any of the things we've done? It doesn't have to be just today's recipe, because if you need me to explain anything, I will. Oh, let's unplug my stick blender. Leave that there. I'll take this off this heat, I think.
Rosie, can I ask you about chutneys and about making them? When I registered as a food business, I only registered for jams and fruit preserves. And the lady who came out to do the food hygiene inspection normally goes to factories as opposed to houses.
They all do.
And she did query with me about chutneys, and I don't enjoy making chutneys, but because of the pumpkin season and the farm, it's such a waste to not do some. But if you are doing it to sell it in the farm shop, do you have to have a pH meter and this water activity thing?
No, not as far as I know. I never did and never have. I haven't heard of anyone needing that. I mean, chutneys are so cooked. I mean, they're
Well,
cooked
exactly.
so
And there's vinegar
long.
in it.
The thing is, they're a fruit preserve in the main, you know. But
Well, pumpkins, yeah, fruit. So
yeah, I mean, I never had a problem with chutney. Nobody ever queried anything. I wouldn't worry.
because it was just about whether to go back to them. I was a bit loath to put my head above the parapet to
No,
change the
I wouldn't.
registration. I've got a 5 rating,
Yeah, you'll be
and
fine. As
I
long,
nuke I don't have an oven big enough to do jars in anymore. So I've got a Tom press like yours, but without the tap. And
yeah,
I water bath the jars, and I water bath lots of things afterwards as well to
yeah.
make sure they're fully nuked.
You'll be absolutely fine. Just make sure you stick to sort of recipe traditional.
Yeah,
Don't mean you have to follow the recipe and put everything in that's in it, but stick to the base, the vinegar, the
yes,
sugar,
yeah,
a sort of ratio and all of that. Just use it as a guide. But I don't think anyone. The only thing I would say not to make, it are kind of pickles, like bread and butter pickle, because they're not cooked. They're just salted and then put into the vinegar, and they can ferment. And it's those sort of things are things to make for yourself.
yes,
If you're
yeah,
making sort of plum chutney or spiced apple chutney or something, you'll be absolutely fine. Proper cooked chutneys.
yeah. Well, the thing is, we made one lot that we'd kind of given to people, and they went, "Oh God, this is gorgeous."
Yeah,
And they keep asking for it, and it's like, oh.
yeah,
But thank you, because that's reassured me. I was just thinking, oh, I didn't go down that route because we thought we
no,
don't enjoy making it. But if we start early enough, we can do. It's a question because it gets mad. It's like a theme park at the blooming pumpkin season. It's totally. I think that's their biggest taking for the entire season is actually the pumpkins.
well, great is all I can say. I mean, it's great that people are, oh, sealed already. I have to wait for the 10 minutes. It's great that people are coming to it, are using it, and the more you can educate them on the spot,
But that's what we want to do this year, is
I
more
mean,
about eating it, not just carving it.
yeah, oh yes, absolutely. I mean, if you can't be there face to face, which you can't always be, then just do a little leaflet or something with some ideas. I think people more and more are getting anxious about the amount of food waste, but they just don't have any experience. They don't know who to ask. Um,
We're hoping to make some soup so that when people are waiting to pay, they can have it from the cafe. And we will make it, and then they will sell it.
Yeah,
And they've got a stock pot thing to keep it warm, because it's such a waste of the stuff. So this year we had COVID during October last year, so we
yeah.
lost the whole month. But this year
But
we're trying to gear up ready.
well, the thing is, if I mean, I might be able to lend you one. If you can get your hands on a standalone hob like I use, I mean, I think I've got a spare one still, is to cook there. Make some chutney in front of them. That is the biggest draw. People used to say at shows and things to us, we used to do hands-on cooking. We used to get them a whole marquee full of people cooking, making raspberry jam, things like Carfest and the big shows. And they couldn't believe that they were going home with a jar of jam they just made in a tent in a field. And I said to them, if you can make this here, you can certainly do it in your lovely kitchen that things are plumbed in and you haven't got to fetch the water from a water bowser outside. So if you cook it in front of them, that A, you'll sell out, and B, have the opportunity to
To
speak to
talk.
people.
Yeah,
Which
I
is
mean, the
where
only thing
really
that
I got teaching is by doing that sort of thing. I got used to speaking to people, and then running classes, and here we are, kind of thing. You know,
the only thing that's interesting is I'm not insured. My insurance doesn't cover teaching, so I don't know.
it's not so much teaching as just
It's
talking to
just
them.
Demonstrating.
demonstrating. I'm just showing you
Yeah.
how I'm making it. I'm not teaching you follow the recipe.
Yeah.
I don't think I had insurance for teaching, to be honest.
They just want to make us so fearful of everything, don't
I know.
they? They don't want people producing their own food and cooking from scratch. That's what they don't want, isn't it? And
Yeah.
we
But
need to be fighting against that.
It's the easiest way to get the message across, and they'll tell other people, they'll go home, they'll enjoy it, and then they'll want to do it. You know, it snowballs, and we've all got to take that on as a mission. You know, people we work with, people we meet socially, we need to be getting people to take notice. And
well, it would be a great idea, because it's all our involvement is all about stopping any more waste. I mean, the stuff gets ploughed back in, but it's sad when, particularly if things have been picked, if they're not used, which is why we have trash trays every time we go. But it annoys me about the pumpkins, because some of the kids, they just throw them, and it's like, that's food you're throwing.
I know,
it's horrible.
Oh, I mean, what is it? How many million are grown? It's something mad, like 18 million pumpkins, and 90, I think it's 94% of them are wasted. I mean, that is just shocking. I know you've got a flavour pumpkin, you know, it's not the best,
no,
really, but that can be done, as we've done in our classes. And the thing is, if you don't feel very sort of confident talking to them about things, you know, that you're doing, you just got to think, you know, a hell of a lot more about it than they do. Nobody's going to stand there and say, oh no, that's not. I mean, if you're lucky, my very first workshop that I had here, which was probably 15 years ago, I had the food, I think it was the food production manager or some such title from Marks and Spencer's. I mean, can you imagine? My first workshop, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I did know what I was doing, but until you do it, you don't know how the timings are going to be, what things you have to prep before, what things you know. But I used to get everybody making everything at those classes. I didn't cook for them, they had to do it all, and that's the way that they learn, and they think, well, that was easy, I thought this was going to be really difficult, you know. So if I can manage with the food production manager from Marks and Spencer's, then, you know, I survived. And you come across all sorts of lovely people. Most people are lovely, and they just want to know, and they're frightened.
Yes,
they think they can't do it. I mean, I've had people, we made marmalade, and the lady said, oh, I didn't know that you could make this, I thought you could only buy it in shops. And you sort of think, well, which came first, the shop or the fruit? You know, I mean, they didn't have shops, and think, well, what can we put in them? But anyway, the main thing is you've got to be polite, and whatever they say, you mustn't look amazed. Right, I'm
you have to be really careful your eyebrows don't start talking.
Exactly. I've had 60-year-old dinner ladies who didn't, I had to show them how to peel carrots, you know, all sorts. And you can't say, you don't carrot, you've got to say, oh yes, of course, I'll show you, you know, it's easy. And everything is easy, and everything is delicious. Positivity is the thing. I put my weight on, so I'm going to wait for the pressure to get up now. But I think out of all the things open to us, teaching people about food, goodness, I don't mean the science of nutrition and, you know, percentages and all that kind of thing, or the specific vitamins, but you know from our Wednesday classes, how many of these basic vegetables and fruits that we just eat without thinking are actually key things in our diet, and if we eat them naturally in natural amounts, we will have a balanced diet, and you won't have to worry about dieting or vitamin supplements or whatever. And I think that is the greatest gift that any of us can give to other people now, frankly, because we're on a path to disintegration. We will make you ill with our food, and then we'll withdraw any healthcare. You know, I mean, what's that about? You know, we just got to.
And we'll make huge profits from that food we're selling you, and then huge profits from the drugs we'll prescribe you to sort out those things.
Yeah.
If you follow that money, honestly, it's such
I know.
a option.
Well, I think we've seen from around the world that the food industry actually directs the direction of travel of the government, not the other way around. And they have such power that it's almost unstoppable, unless, but if you, I keep saying it, you know, if you've got a pyramid and you've got the food, big farmer at the top with a PH, farmer, and then the government, and on down the different distributions and all the rest of it, we are the bottom layer. If we walk away, that pyramid will crumble, but we need to work together on it, not just one or two people here and there. You know, it needs to be a kind of mass walkout and a mass rejection of what we're being told is our way of life. So you know I can talk for hours on this, but I've dropped the timer. But it's, if everybody does a little bit of talking to their children, their grown-up children, grandchildren, work colleagues, and you just drop it into conversations. I mean, you can see people glazing over, so you don't sort of go on and on and on like I do, but amass your information, read as much as you can, and just say, oh, well, this is what I do, you know, and offer to show them if they're interested. So, well, I'm going to be making whatever next on Saturday or Sunday, come round, you know, and show people. And because they will not believe you unless they kind of see it with their own eyes, I'm afraid. And they think it's hours and hours and hours of work, whereas most preserving isn't. It's really quite quick. I know pressure canning takes a bit longer, but my goodness, the results are worth it. And especially this week, I think we've had something out of a jar every day, which is great. That's why we do it. And how are we doing on pressure? Up to 5. Oh, let's pop back up again. I wonder why that is. Let me go down. Yeah, so it's but as far as safety goes, everything you do, from the way that you have to make it, it will be safe. So and really after the kind of first 2 or 3 times, you relax and you don't worry about it too much, you know. That's but that's the way to do it, is to do it in front of them. And you won't be able to, I mean, I used to make marmalade at shows, at the Marmalade Festival, outdoors in February, you know, and they couldn't get the marmalade quick enough. It was sort of going into the jars, and come back later when it's cooled down a bit, you know. But organization is the key, and to get to, you know, doing it successfully in terms of being confident. If you've got things in front of you and you're all organized, and then once you start talking to people, you forget about, you know, it's a bit nerve-wracking and everything. And if you're going to make something in particular, then just do a little simple recipe sheet you can hand them and say, well, if you'd like to make some at home, there's the pumpkins. And you know, even you know, ask them to take a photograph of what they've done on their phone and send it to the farm shop so they can pin it up on a wall or something, or get the kids to draw a picture of it. And you know, there's all sorts of ways of engaging. Oh, right, I'm up to pressure, I mean, not temperature. And just check the timing. So we're doing 60 minutes, 1 hour. So if we come back about 5 o'clock, then a good time for the pressure to drop a bit afterwards. Also, I'd say if you don't know something, just say, oh, I've never been asked that before. I'll find out and let you know, and just take their email or something, and make sure you do find out and let them know. I mean, don't say to them you're not going to use their email for anything. You'll just, when they get worried about that, say, oh, I haven't got time to make databases and things such. And if you ask something, I mean, you can always ask me. You can always check if you're worried. You know, I don't mind. I just want more people to make things. Basically, it's I haven't got enough life left to make a huge, great, profitable business out of it. You know, it's just a sort of bit of a mission for me. So, okay, I'll see you back at about 5 o'clock then. As I say, that'll give time for the canner to cool down a bit, and we can just have a look and see how it looks in the jar. I'll be interested to see, frankly. Okay, see you in a bit. Welcome back. The canner's been switched off. It's nearly depressurized, not quite. It's still a bit hissy if I lift the weight, so I'll give it another few minutes. But it's not it's reading 0 pressure on the gauge. A lot of people say, oh, I just take the weight off, you know, but I've never been brave enough, you know, to sort of think I don't want it siphoning or something. But I just release as much as possible. It's still locked, so yeah. So I've got our portion of sauce in here, and what I'm going to do at home is when I heat it up for the pasta, I'm going to thicken it. And as I said before, I usually use corn flour, a couple of teaspoonfuls in a little dish with some water, enough to make it a smooth paste and runny. You know, I don't put it in thick lumps or anything. And that's usually enough to thicken most things. And what I'm going to do, I'll probably add, as I said, either some yogurt, plain yogurt, or cream. But I thought I'm going to use one of the jars of sausage meatballs that we made right back in the early days. I can't believe we're nearly halfway through this course. In fact, I think we are exactly halfway through. So I'm going to use one of those, and I'm going to heat them up in a separate pan, and then have those with just plain pasta and the sauce poured over and some grated cheese on the top. Parmesan is nice, and I try and keep a biggish block in the fridge all the time. I don't buy the little sort of packet of kind of wedges because I just find them too wasteful. I kind of save up and buy a big block, and then you can sort of grate it more easily. That's great, but actually I might just have some good old cheddar grated in big shreds on the top, and see how that is, and I will report back. Next time we are doing beetroot. So if you've got beetroot you're growing, or you know someone who grows it, or you can get some from a market or a farm gate or supermarket. The supermarkets tend not to have sort of beetroot with the leaves on. They tend to sort of, I mean, it's not essential that you buy it with the leaves on, but they sort of stay a bit fresher. But don't really want the vacuum packed ones or anything like that. Just fresh beetroot, if you can get your hands on it, and we'll make some. We'll just process it. I've got some up here. I did from last year's. I haven't grown much this year because I had so many jars of this, and it's very, very good. It's just processed. I've just got that in some slightly salted water, and this week we drained it and had it with something. I can't remember what we had it with, but I drained it and used about half the jar, and we just mixed it with mayonnaise and some salt and pepper and had it. Well, it was last Saturday. We get from the farm shop, we get they make sausage rolls, and they're kind of enough for a meal, if you know, one is enough for a meal each. They're quite meaty and not like, you know, the great high street stores sausage rolls at all. So we had some salad, and we had these mixed with mayonnaise, and then later on in the week I had it with something else. I can't remember now, but anyway, we just eat them as they are from the jar, or we can make some beetroot soup. So we'll have a look at that next time. If you can get some beetroot, I will make the recipe live. I think this is all calmed down now. There we are. Taken off. Let's get it open. I think beetroot is a much forgotten, also round type vegetable. Nobody really sort of thinks of it as being a vegetable in its own right. It's just sort of something you have now and again, and in sort of fairly small amounts, where actually it could play a much bigger part in our nutrition, as we learnt in our Wednesday preserving classes the other week. Anyway, let's take that off and let it cool down. All looking good. Water's looking clear, so that's good. See if we can get some out. I think this is something I'm going to be making kind of on and off all the summer. Well, I say summer, but you know. And it'd probably be slightly different each time, but that's nothing wrong with that. What I meant to say is what you could put in this if you grow lettuce, and you know, often they bolt, or they all get big all at the same time. Cook with it. It's very, very good cooked with things. So you could put lettuce into this and then process it in the same way. But it's also very good with garden peas. What we do with peas now is we don't cook them in water. We just put them in a pan with a knob of butter on a very low heat and let them heat through and cook that way, because there's a certain amount of liquid comes out of the butter as well as the fat. But you could then put wedges of lettuce in that right at the last minute and just let it sort of wilt into it, and it's really delicious. So don't overlook the humble lettuce. It doesn't have to be homegrown. I mean, you can obviously buy lettuce, but use the sort of soft types, or the little gem, you know, those type, not the iceberg. They wouldn't be quite so successful. But let me see if I can pick one of these up. Oh, it's still really, really hot, but it's kept its color, which is good, and all looks well. So I hope you find it tasty and useful, and a good addition to the store cupboard, and also dealing with the inevitable why did I plant so many of these situation or if you're given a lot by a gardener who's planted too many, you know, that kind of thing. So we'll try it tonight, and I'll give you some feedback on it. Okay, so I'll see you in a couple of weeks for your beetroots, and happy canning.